All right, Chris and I are at the hotel. It's a few hours before sunset. Figured we'd try and punish ourselves with a climb up Cadillac. This will be the longest sustained climb, the biggest climb, arguably the best view.
I kind of think a descent at sunset could be pretty magical, so maybe we'll check that one out.
That's what it's all about right here. I've been coming here as a child, first time here was probably 3 years old. My parents brought me up here. I've also been up here on my bike probably 6 or 7 times. Every time it's just realized how much of a gem it is. And I've been to 6 out of 7 continents, like 30 something countries. And every time I come to the Maine coast, I am reminded about why I love this state, why I live here. Maine is an absolute gem. And even though I love travel, I love going to different countries, seeing different cultures, to come back to this is a gift. I wouldn't want any other.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Hello, everyone. That was a little teaser of the film that we are going to be talking about tonight. I'm Sarah Knapp. I'm the founder of Mappy Hour, and I'm so excited to be here with all of you. Before we get started, I just wanted to do a few quick announcements. One is we do have comments open, and I definitely encourage everyone to say hello, why you love bikepacking or biking or adventuring, and be nice to each other. We will, we do not tolerate any sort of hate speech or any unkindness in the comments. So just be aware we're watching those, and we invite you to come with a curious mind. So please ask questions as well. We will share them, or I will share them with Chris and Chris later. And the second announcement or just note I wanted to share is that Sierra Nevada who's the sponsor of this event as well as the film, is hooking everyone up tonight with some free delivery from Taproom. So you can use the code GetSierraNevada on Taproom, which is TAPRM.com, if you want to get some beer delivered, or you can go to Whole Foods and pick it up yourself. So with that, shout out to Sierra Nevada and all the stuff that they've been supporting us in creating and all of that. So without further ado, hi, Chris and Chris.
Hello.
All right.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm excited. Let's dive in. So how'd you guys meet? What's your origin story of your friendship?
Chris tells it better than I do.
It was be on the same page. It was Katahdin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got a last minute invite from Chris Shane to go ski Katahdin in March of 2018, I believe it was. So
Katahdin is Maine's biggest mountain, and just to backstory on that, it's a 17-mile ski in just to get there, right?
Yeah, it's a whole permit process. It's not like visiting in the summer where you can drive to the parking lot. You've got to ski those 17 miles in the parking lot. But so I showed up one day late. These guys were out the day before me. I was coming in still jet lagged from Tanzania, climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, and I got skied up in and met Chris Shane, and I have to say climbing Katahdin in the winter is about 800 times harder than climbing Mount Kilimanjaro is. So
cool. Yeah, so you guys started with the Sufferfest friendship from the beginning.
Day one. Yeah.
Yeah. And I always do this with these lives. I just jump straight in. So just for anyone who didn't read the beautiful synopsis that we wrote, Chris and Chris are the bikers in the little teaser of the film we just showed, and they are the ones that actually did the trip that we're talking about. And they also have a YouTube channel, which we can share the link to later. So they are adventurers both on the bike and it sounds like on skis as well. Cool. So, all right. So you're skiing Katahdin. You guys love adventuring in Maine. How did it turn into bikepacking this summer?
Oh, man. Well, started with another text. It's usually how our adventures start, is text. It's a very like out of the blue text. Hey, do you want to do this thing? Well, I mean, I'll speak just on Chris' behalf. Just on this part, I knew Chris was doing a cross country bike tour, which I'll let him talk more about. But ultimately, with the pandemic that we are in now, that did not work out for him in terms of being able to finish it. And this project came into fruition by just some late night hours playing around in Strava Route Builder, where I kind of figured out that it would be really cool to trace the whole coast of Maine, which really was inspired by the fact that Maine, the coastline of Maine, ends up being, I think the geographical measurement is 3,478 miles of actual coastline that the state has, which is obviously massive, and that's just a result of all the islands and the archipelagos and everything that just is a part of the state geography. And so I wanted to try to bike what was the most bikeable route on the state, and I figured Chris was the perfect adventure buddy to do that with. And of course, because he wasn't able to finish his trip, it just made perfect sense. I think, it was a 5-minute response time, yes, I'm in, let's figure it out.
Yep. And the rest is history. As we say, we had some conference calls and and Chris can talk to more about this, got some sponsors on board, and we didn't just like do a linear line. If you look at a map of what we did, we chose to go down every single major peninsula. So it's a very circuitous route that we took down to Harpswell and down to Stonington on the Deer Isle, went down to the Pemaquid Peninsula. Just we tried to hit every single place we could, and
I think we cut out like 300-400 miles easily. We could have added, but just didn't make sense to do a lot of
do the major ones with maybe a major town or a famous lighthouse at the end of it. But if we had done every single little nook and cranny, we would have been close to 3,000 miles. So.
Obviously, you can't actually bike all 3,000.
Yeah. Like, has anyone done that, or is that just like?
Yeah, there's on all these islands and things like that. But you could, if you wanted to, get really crazy, and I'm sure you could bike, almost 3,000 miles or something like that.
Yeah. So when you were looking at the Strava and planning this route, like, have people done something like this before? Or you're just looking at smaller kind of sections and connecting them, and what did that, I'm just imagining you in like the middle of nowhere on gravel roads that are like maybe not super bike friendly. So I guess 2-part question. 1, was it all super bikeable? And 2, how did you kind of figure that out?
Well, Chris and I are both from Maine. I actually lived in Boston at the time. And we both know the state of Maine really, really well, him better than I, especially on the coast. The coast is very, very bikeable. And there's actually a few, the state of Maine, which we can talk about later, supported our trip. And the reason is because they want to put out, more content and more knowledge about, how bikeable some of these places are, and particularly, the northeast part of Maine. So once you really start going up past Acadia is really where they want more people to visit. So there are not technically you could bike gravel roads close to the coast. But it's not the best biking. It's actually a snowmobile trail, basically, ATV trail. But you could bike that, but I wouldn't recommend it because we biked it 1 mile of our entire 750-mile trip, and I got flat. The only flat of the entire.
The only flat of the trip. That's the 1 mile gravel.
Would not be recommendable. And so the terrain really is amazing. You can get that gravel if you go to Western Maine. That's all logging roads and Northern Maine. But and those are beautiful in their own right. Chris and I have a Chris and Chris episode coming out. That's a
YouTube channel, everyone. Chris and Chris.
It's small, but maybe one day it'll be big. Where we do some of that biking. But yeah, so the terrain is really, really bikeable, really friendly. And the interesting thing about the route is you can still get a fair amount of vertical gain. I think one day we did 80 miles and still biked 6,000 feet of about 6,000 vertical feet of climbing. Some of it's fake vert in the sense that, you do have, it's a lot of rolling hills. So you do have momentum measure coming up. You're not doing a 6,000 foot sustained climb, which is obviously different, but 6,000 feet of climbing is still, substantial. You do have
So, I think it was
just a thumbs up, by the way.
the day from I believe it was Port Clyde to Camden. We never were more than 100 feet above sea level. But that was the day I think that we did, almost like 6,000 feet of climbing. It's just nonstop up and down. It is not flat on the coast of Maine.
Yeah.
I feel like the East Coast is tricky like that. It's like it doesn't have as like sexy of the like 14er kind of mountains, but we still have like these crazy places to adventure that are potentially even harder to get to.
Episode coming, not to plug it, but we got
Have we mentioned that?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, we definitely need to drop that link in. So I guess, like, had you been bike packing before, or is this just like, let's try this camping and biking thing?
So I have been bike packing before. I've been a cyclist my whole life. I raced mountain bikes in high school, and then I kind of switched to road biking when I got more into the endurance side of things. And then myself and a couple other friends rode across Morocco a couple years ago, and that really whet my appetite. But I was in more bike touring setup, panniers hanging on the side of the bikes. And so when Chris got involved and his sponsorship genius, we got a sponsor from Apidora as well, a bike packing company. So the bikes, instead of big heavy panniers on the side of the bikes, we had like nice lightweight type bike packing stuff. But we could talk about that a little bit later. So I whet my appetite in Morocco. And then I attempted to ride my bike from San Diego to Portland, Maine to raise money for suicide prevention. And I still raised over $10,000 for suicide prevention, but unfortunately I left in early March, and I made it 750 miles to El Paso, Texas before, states just started locking down. And the whole point was to talk to people about suicide and educate people. And, when you walk in smelly and to a store or a restaurant and people just treat you like, you have the plague, it wasn't working out. So I had to call it quits, and I'm going to continue that, once the pandemic is over.
Sure.
And, but that was kind of my experience. So ironically, the length of our trip along the Maine coast was 750 miles. So I did 2 trips this spring, one in Maine and one in the West. And that was my experience with bike packing.
So are you hooked? Is this like a thing you're going to do? Okay.
Yeah. It's like, okay, let's go to Rwanda. Let's go to Colombia. Let's go to all these amazing countries. And once this thing is over, so once we can leave the country and bike pack.
Yeah, we talked about it a lot, but there's something about, when you're on your feet running, you can cover a fair amount of distance if you're really, really fit, but there's only so much terrain and distance you can really cover. Whereas on a bike, you're going 15 miles an hour, which I think to the human eye is like that perfect sweet spot where you can still be getting this great active exercise, and activity level that is, amazing. But then also your brain can take in everything at that speed, and it can just create these awesome, just really enriching experiences. I think that, and it just keeps flying by, just more cool stuff. It never ends. It's just endless simulation.
It's slow enough to experience a lot more. And I speak to this in the film that I had been going to, Popham Beach since I was 4 years old. And, but you always drive there at 50 miles an hour. And when you ride there at 14, 15, or 15 miles an hour, you can stop and smell the roses. You wave to every single person that's walking by or, raking leaves in their yard. It's just such a different experience to
chased by all the dogs, everything.
Yeah. Get chased by all the dogs.
I recently got bit by a dog, so I'm like not into that vibe. So, okay, speaking of stories, what was like the most Maine thing that happened or that you saw on your trip?
The most, can you repeat that? The most what?
Maine. The most like quintessentially Maine thing. Only could have happened in Maine.
Huh.
Chris ate his first lobster roll, which is anti-Maine.
Yeah.
Okay, so lobster rolls are not a Maine thing?
Well, no, it's anti that he hadn't had his first lobster roll until this trip, which was unbelievable. I could not. I mean, I was embarrassed for him.
36 years into my Maine experience, I had my first lobster roll. That was
How was
underwhelming.
it?
I have to say, I don't know what all the fuss is about. But
I think there are a lot of different things that happen that are uniquely Maine. I think, I mean, honestly, it's funny. Like we were trying to talk yesterday or today. I can't even like remember everything that happened, and because there's so many things that happen, and we have all this awesome footage, and we'll have to watch it through again. But one of the things that's just really funny, and I've never seen any other state do this, is for some reason people in Maine like to leave their old couches on the side of roads. We saw a couch on a side road.
For people to like sit on, or for people to take?
I think
Or-
just free to take kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, they were sat. I mean, we sat on them. So I mean, I don't know, just for cyclists to take a break because it's in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, I mean, we rode for 10 days, and there was I think we saw a couch like every day, and we got to the point where we were disappointed that we hadn't stopped and filmed any of the couches, and so I just made this bold statement on our last day that we would find a couch because I was sure that we would see one, and sure enough, we found the best one, I think, of all.
Yeah.
So yeah, we filmed that one.
Amazing. I feel like this could be a book. The couches of Maine.
Definitely.
That's a great idea. A photo book of that would be awesome. And then Chris or I could sit in each of them and test them out and maybe rate the
Cleanliness, smelliness. Yeah, it'll be.
Each couch. Great. All right. So speaking of content, let's get into the filming part of this. So I guess the first question I have is, did you always want to make a film, or is that part of like, as you were planning it, you were like, oh, it'd also be kind of cool to record this?
That's a good question. I think initially Chris and I, when we started talking about it, because we're both photographers by nature, and I do photography and video now. I run a production company called Pamola Creative, which obviously created and produced this biking film. We thought that at the minimum we would do some photography, and we started thinking about, well, maybe I could bring one camera, maybe I could bring a GoPro, and sort of do something on our own. This YouTube channel thing that we're making a big fuss out of, that was created as a result of us doing this project. So it wasn't like we were doing any of that before. So yes, it evolved. It started with me asking my business partner, Jamie Walter, who edited this video and did an incredible job. He was really into the idea, and initially we thought, well, maybe he would come with us. And then we thought maybe he would catch us from time to time and maybe shoot some supporting video so that we could create something. And then it kind of just evolved from there, where we realized that we had a cool enough idea that we could actually maybe produce a film and pitch it as something where we could. And really, I think I want to make it known that the reason that we come up with these ideas, there's nothing self-serving about us doing these things. It's, initially it's our heart and our soul just wanting to go on adventures and see things, right? And then additionally to that, it's us caring so much about the places that we go, and Maine is so near and dear to us, and it's impacted us so much that the result of this film is really just us wanting to do that place justice and tell adventure stories in the place that we're from, because we think it's the best place in the world. So that's why we're doing this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we both agree that the West Coast gets all the glory and all the love, and there's so much beauty out here, and culture, and the people are so wonderful that we really just want to shed a little bit more light on the East Coast.
Yeah.
I'm into that. I love that. So, okay, you have an idea for a film, and how do you get sponsors? Like, walk us through what that looks like, how you figure out if the sponsor is the right fit for your film. Before we started, we were just talking about like how that's not always the case, and how, being really mindful about the brands that we work with is really important to make sure we can do our work the way that we envision it. So what does that process look like for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting question, and there's a lot of things that go into it. I think initially it always starts with, whether or have a warm connection or not. I mean, that's always really helpful and should always be sort of the basis of how you approach people. Is how can you make that warm connection? And cold sponsorship, cold reach outs are really tough, especially in the outdoor world. It can happen if you have a really amazing idea, but it's not going to happen a lot. The thing for us is like, we really want to make sure that when we approach people, we know that the idea that we're doing or the project that we want to do, we want to look for partners that can hopefully support us financially to do these things. Is it the right fit for their brand, and why? And I think it's really easy to convince yourself that every single brand that you want to work with is the right brand for your project. And most of the time, you're probably wrong. You really need to be diligent with thinking about like what brands you're approaching and why, and what they share on their socials. What message are they trying to communicate? And I think for us, we already had a pre-existing relationship with Sierra Nevada for doing some ski project stuff that we're still working on with them. So we know them really well, and this was a no-brainer for them. We just mentioned, in fact, we were doing a checkup call on our ski project with Sierra Nevada, and we just mentioned that we were going to bike the coast of Maine, and immediately they were so ecstatic about it and they wanted to get involved. But we would have found out that we would have known that. We just assumed we were in a global pandemic and they had no money, and actually that was wrong. So that's another thing I want to mention is like being creative with like how resources are available. Events were canceled, right? So that's a massive chunk of budget that is all of a sudden is not able to be spent. So where else do companies put that money? They should put that into content or storytelling that further develops their brand. And so that was how Sierra Nevada approached this project and supporting us there. And then secondarily to that, obviously I'm mentioning that we already had connections with the people that we worked with, but if we didn't, we still would approach it the same way. The story behind this project is telling a story about biking in Maine, and specifically the coast of Maine, which is this incredibly beautiful place that everyone in the world should see. And so we presented that to the Visit Maine, which is the tourism department of Maine. And we presented it specifically to the tourism agency that they contract to do their storytelling and branded content. With this idea of, hey, we're going to go do this trip along the coast of Maine, and we want to tell a story about the coast of Maine. And that's sort of the angle. And so what is our value that we're adding to them? Well, we're giving this an amazing set of content and assets that they can use for multiple different channels. Doesn't have to involve Chris and I biking. They can take all the landscape images that we shot or that we got on our video cameras to utilize for different projects that they need. We brought Sierra Nevada beer with us so that we could get some of those assets and images for them. We could obviously tag them on social media and all that stuff. So I'm rambling, but I think the key takeaway for the sponsorship thing is just know your value, but then also knowing what value you're bringing to them. Because I think a lot of people think they have a great idea and then they sort of just send it out there into the ether, and that nothing really comes from it. I think the big key thing is making sure that you're connecting to the right people with an idea that fits their brand, and that's a good starting point.
Yeah. I mean, I think the idea of getting paid to adventure sounds amazing. Like, who wouldn't want to do that? But there's so much thought and extra legwork that goes into this whole process that you kind of touched on. So the actual filming, I saw some of the stills of like the camera set up and all of that. Like, how did it work? Did Jamie come in like a separate vehicle and like set stuff up? Did you have a GoPro on the front of your bike? Like, walk us through kind of like, as a filmmaker and as a photographer, what it looks like to be biking, like, I'm assuming, I think you said like over 80 miles a day, and also be focusing on getting content.
I can kind of speak to like what we did on the bike, and then maybe Chris can speak to more the van and following production. Chris and I both had a GoPro with us, and we were basically told to self-film us ourselves or each other whenever we saw fancy. So if something happened or emotionally, there was a day when we felt like, I personally felt like had a few close calls with cars on some of the narrower roads. We stopped for lunch and I went off and I sat down in the woods and just kind of talked to the camera about, man, I just feel like we're not getting the love right now from motorists getting honked at, and we're this far over. And so we would just talk to our emotions into the GoPros. And some of that made it into the film. In addition to that, we both carried our still cameras, our SLRs with a couple lenses. And if we saw a beautiful spot or a beautiful moment, or not so beautiful, there was one day where we stopped for 45 minutes in the pouring rain, and we each rode around in circles for each other in the pouring rain just to capture the moment, because we were so engrossed and kind of uncomfortable, and wanted to capture that, just how cold and miserable we really felt. And we spent a lot of time like making imagery in the pouring rain.
That's the longest we stopped was when it was raining.
Yeah. In fact, the production crew in the van was waiting for us for lunch, and they're like, "You guys coming along?" Like, we had live trackers see exactly where we were, and they saw that we stopped in this one spot, and we're just like, "Yeah, sorry, we're just trying to nail a couple shots here." So that's what we did on the bike: is carried a GoPro, self-filmed whenever something interesting happened, and then shot some stills, and then Chris can talk to a little bit more the film crew.
Yeah, I mean, it's always super fluid. It depends on what the project is. But for this one specifically, what we did was we had a truck that was Jamie's truck, and then we had a production van. So we rented a van, and then we had Taylor Walker, who was our director of photography. Typically, that would mean that he is typically managing the camera, or shooting the camera rather, as a primary shooter. But Jamie and Taylor tend to swap off back and forth for that a lot. And then we had our friend John Secord as well in the production van, and he shot photography stills and helped out with time lapses. I don't know if you caught on that video, but there was a day to night time lapse that we ended there, and that is so hard to shoot. And he's a time lapse wizard. Has worked with us with some other projects like that before, so he was along, and so that was our crew of 5. And basically what we would do is they would have our route. So we would know our ending point for every day. And so we would start, if there was something that was really beautiful at the start of the ride, then maybe we would coordinate some types of shots there. But typically what their job would be is they would follow the route that we were riding, and set up where there were really iconic shots. Because it's important to remember, I mean, we're producing an 8 to 10 minute film. Obviously, we don't want to shoot, 3 to 4 hours worth of footage every day. It would take forever to even, process and look at all that footage. So really, you're looking for the most beautiful, iconic shots of every single day. And then sort of just, making sure and being intentional about setting those up. And, Chris and I sometimes would see stuff, so we could relay back to them, hey, this could be really cool. But ultimately, like, I think I did a lot of legwork with Jamie at the beginning to make sure that everything was like sort of set when it came to the route and all that. But really what happened was, it's like once we got to day 2 or day 3, we got in a rhythm. And then I kind of realized like Jamie just sort of stepped it up to another level, and just like was just like the total rock star with organizing everything that we needed, which was amazing. Not that we needed anything. It was just because like we were on a production, so we might as well just do it. Like, they just had food at our campground and they would just cook us breakfast. That was kind of nice. Why we're not going to turn that down.
It was huge. Yeah. We were doing 80 to 100 miles a day, and we're pretty fatigued, and mentally just, knowing we have to film a little bit, and it's pretty stressful. And having Jamie and Walker and John waiting for us at a campsite, with dinner ready was huge. And I want to point out that although they did follow us around in a van, we carried all of our stuff as if we were doing it by ourselves, our camping gear, water, snacks.
So obviously we weren't fully unsupported or anything like that, but it's in the nature of making a film, because we sort of had a greater vision with that. And so we sacrificed that self-supported kind of stuff, which is fine.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But can't thank Jamie and the boys enough for really helping us out, because there are low days. We did a whole day. The remnants of the tropical storm came through, and we rode in the pouring rain and a headwind, and just down in the dumps when you get to camp and have those guys waiting for us was unbelievable.
Yeah, and they drive by us and honk their horn, or be really like just like stuff like that. Like just always kind of nice to know that they might ride by us and blare the horn, right, and just every day, or a couple times. Well, it's always fun just to kind of have that and know that that'll be there at some point during the day. That's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. And so I'm actually going to deviate. We had a question come in. It fits really well right now. And everyone's invited to ask questions whenever, and we'll add them in. But Deanna asks, is your film out already? So if you want to speak to what's the timeline on that and where people can find it, I think now it's a good time.
It's not out yet. It will be out in, I'm hoping, like 2 weeks or so. The best place to follow and get those updates would be on our Pamola Creative Instagram page. So at Pamola Creative, Pamola Creative. We'll share those updates, and we'll do a big launch on the film, and we can't wait to share all of that. And then of course, Chris and I don't know if like our socials or anything are on the email blast and all that stuff, but we'll obviously be sharing it as well. But I hope in about 2 weeks, and I'm hoping that Sierra Nevada will put some push behind it as well.
Nice, cool, yeah. All right, so 2 weeks, everyone. You get to see the whole thing, but we did get a nice sneak peek today. So
yeah.
All right, so what is next for Chris and Chris?
Oh, the sky is the limit. Jeez, we're always brainstorming. We've just always got a million ideas going. There's definitely going to be a lot of winter stuff coming. We have some stuff that is shot that hasn't been released yet. Chris is the one that edits all the Chris and Chris videos. Chris Shane is the one that edits those, and he's pretty backed up at the moment. But as soon as he has some time, we're going to be pushing out 2 or 3 more, and we've got a few to film in the works.
Yeah, I mean, I would want to stress that there's not like, I wouldn't call it magic that we're producing on our own. Obviously, this bikepacking project was an actual production. We brought Hollywood cinema cameras with us. We really really shot intentionally for that. What Chris and I kind of figured out and feel really strongly about is that when we finish this project, this bikepacking project, it was sort of just an extension of how we've always felt. It was like there's not enough video stuff and storytelling around just the outdoors in New England in general. And by storytelling and video, I don't mean really high-end cinematic quality videos. I mean like going out and just doing something cool, filming it, and putting it out there into the world and sharing it with people. So I think hopefully there will be a format where I'll be able to figure out how to actually make them cool enough cinematically, but then also be able to put them out, timely and all that. But ultimately, we want to just kind of find a mix between doing cool and original adventures that are, maybe they're biking, maybe they're running, maybe they're link ups, maybe they're skiing, whatever they are, and trying to showcase all these areas around New England. But additionally to that, tie in different stories about the people that are doing really cool stuff in New England. And that could be, Chris and I piloted that idea with tagging along with a friend of ours, Bill Karsha, who was hiking every single trail in the White Mountain National Forest an entire summer, which is absurd. 1,700 miles in 90 days. So we just caught up with him and shot like a very bootleg episode on like telling his story. Shot it and edited it in a week, all on GoPro. Like that's just it, and just to do it. And so we want to intersperse like some cool, bad adventure stuff with that kind of stuff. We've got a lot of cool ideas that we can do that, might just stories that might never be told otherwise. And this is a cool format to try to do that.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can share, but if you can, is there an adventure? What's the craziest adventure or the wildest place that you are kind of hoping to go? You don't need, maybe it's not even a plan yet, but do you have like this kind of like epic one that you hope to someday be able to do?
Well,
one or two.
I mean, the world is at our grasp here. We're trying to, I think, for the most part, keep it in the Northeast.
Yeah.
I know personally me, and I don't even know if I've voiced this to Chris, is like, that the way we met on Katahdin in winter, in terms of epic level, it doesn't really get much more remote than that in the Northeast. And that was such an unbelievable adventure. I would love to go up there again. And I know it won't be the same. We were there the last week. They were open, and the avalanche conditions were they were very, very safe, which is pretty rare up there because they do get a lot of snow. There's a lot of steep terrain. You've got to be super careful. But the stars aligned for that specific trip. And I know if we were to go back and film it, it would probably be different conditions. But that's always been on my mind is going back up there. It was so magical. The ranger up there said, in the summer you'd be sharing this place with 5,000 people, but you guys have 200,000 acres and there's 4 of you all to yourselves. And it was a really magical experience. So
yeah, I would second that. I think when we did that trip, I think we all consider ourselves more photographers, and so we all shot photography. In fact, one of the magazines here in Maine, Down East Magazine, which is a well-known magazine here, and they really feature just beautiful photography. They did a massive spread on that trip specifically because we got such good conditions. So it's very rare that the stars align like that. We also had an amazing skier with us, Andrew Drummond, so that helped. But I think that for sure was going back into, so that would be Baxter State Park, which maybe some people might be familiar with, but it's a park that's been designated for the people of Maine. It's just actually a trust. It's a really interesting format where it has these really interesting jurisdictions where the preservation of the land itself is the primary duty, is a primary goal of the park. It's not for recreation. So every decision made is always for the conservation of the land to be as it was when it was purchased. So it really feels like that. It doesn't feel like a national park, where you can tell there's been human intervention there. So I think that's something that we want to go back and do a really good story on. Going into Katahdin would be great, obviously in winter, and then also circumnavigating it or some form of traversing through on ski in the wintertime would be amazing. You can do up to 100 miles on your skis by traversing through the park. That would obviously be a bigger project, but I think that would be really interesting. This is obviously New England based. Chris and I are we travel outside of New England, and we could do plenty of stuff there. But the other one I would mention, I'll just spill the beans. We'd love to do a circumnavigation of Maine, mostly just because we don't think anyone's really done it properly. That would be really neat, interesting too, because there's a lot of paddling and biking involved to do that properly. And I think that would probably be a project that we'd figure out to make a film for.
Yeah, it would be very, very long and intensive. But if you look at a map, riverways, you can either riverways, ocean, or roads, you can pretty much trace an outline of the entire state.
Yeah,
that would be cool.
That would be a huge, that would be expedition level type adventure. But
yeah,
Next year.
Gears are ticking up here. So
awesome. So I'm just gonna give a shout out to everyone. Feel free to put your questions in the comments because I only have one more, and then I'm throwing it over to all of you. So feel free to drop them in. My last question is for people who haven't really been to Maine before, or like maybe have only been to Acadia, or kind of like the more popular spots. What do you recommend as like a 2 to 5 day trip, nothing crazy, but a way to kind of see Maine, as a visitor?
Man, there are so many beautiful spots other than Acadia National Park and Baxter State Park. And even if you look at Baxter State Park, and I know we've been talking about this place quite a bit, there's so much more than just Mount Katahdin. Everybody fixates on Mount Katahdin and Baxter State Park. And we did a Chris and Chris episode earlier this year where we went up a mountain called Double Top, and the next morning went up a couple mountains called the Travelers. There's the North and South Traveler, and they're just beautiful. And there's 10% of the people on these mountains that you see on Katahdin. So even if you do want to go to these places, like in Acadia has what's called the quiet side. It has the western side of the island, away from Bar Harbor, that there's just as many beautiful hikes and mountain vistas and crashing surf, but you don't have the Park Loop Road. So people don't go there. There are many hidden gems. The White Mountain National Forest kind of spills over into Maine up in Evans Notch, Carabasset Valley, Sugarloaf Bigelow area, way up in Aroostook County is stunning. You've got a little place called Dubuli. It's a Maine public reserve land, and it's the best trout fishing in the state of Maine. Down east, a place called the Cutler Coast. The sky is the limit. You just need a good map, or this is where Instagram can help you, and just check out some hashtags. Look at a Maine hashtag and see where these pictures are taken and go explore.
Yeah, I would say Chris basically just ran the whole gamut on everything that I would suggest going to. One place I would say I'm super passionate about is sort of kind of rebranding it as sort of part of the Maine Highlands. But if you look at sort of the 100-mile wilderness area, which is basically the last 100 miles of the Appalachian Trail before it reaches Katahdin, that whole region connects to Galapagos. It connects to there's a little town called Milo where there's a Bissell Brothers brewery there, which is a really famous beer. There's a brewery in Portland, super famous. They have a second brewery there in Milo, which is in the middle of nowhere, but super awesome. The people are incredible. Just gorgeous farmlands there. There is a beautiful mountain called Borestone Mountain, which is a standalone peak, which you cannot find in New England. There's only like 3 or 4 of them. Somehow it's just standing by itself. So I would recommend that area, which like is, if you search, the 100-mile wilderness, you'll find Dover, Foxcroft, Monson, even Greenville into Moosehead Lake, that area. That's a really beautiful place that needs more people to go to. And the infrastructure is there now. It's ready for people to come visit.
The AMC owns much of the land up there, so it's all public. There's tons of camping, and what the AMC doesn't own, Maine North Woods owns. And it's gate access, and there's a small fee to get in there, but it's preserved for public access. It is shared with logging companies, but there's so much recreating to be done and so much beauty up there.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I have Sugarloaf on my list for this winter, so that's going to be my first foray into Maine skiing. Yeah.
Dress warmly.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So Sam asks, can you share the bike route?
Yeah, we can. I don't know if I have I created, so there is we have all 10 days sorted on Strava, so each day's route, but we have put it together as one continuous route. But I don't know if I have the link. I don't know if you can share that post hoc, Sarah, but of course we'd love to share that.
Yeah, so Sam and anyone else who wants that, as long as you signed up on the Mappy Hour site for the event, then you'll get the thank you email, which we'll send out later this week, and we'll make sure to include the link in that.
Yeah, totally. And to go off that too, happy to share any beta if anybody wants to talk about. Feel free to reach out to us. Always happy to share any insights on biking on the coast of Maine.
Yeah, and their Instagram handles are on the page as well, so hopefully everyone can easily find them. I'm assuming DMs are okay. A way to reach out to you guys.
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, Mark says, what training did you do? How about gear for the trip?
What training? Let's see. Well, I attempted to bike across the country, so my fitness was there. No training can prepare you for the unpleasant side of bikepacking, which is saddle sores. But you just got to prepare for that and be ready to take a little bit of pain. But we basically just biked each other into shape. Chris would pull me along. And it's funny, Chris had a buddy join us for one day who was a very, very fit. And I'm sorry if he's on this right now. He showed up and this guy's fit. And we're like, woo, all right. But this was day 7 or 8. And we just rode away from him. And I think that's when we realized, and we've got, 20 pounds of gear, camping gear and camera gear on our bikes, hucking those up 5,000 feet of climbing a day. And it was that day we realized, wow, we're in pretty good shape, 600 miles in, and we're in getting to another level in terms of fitness. But really, it was just, other than the residual fitness that was left over for me from my attempted bike ride across the country, we kind of just rode ourselves into shape.
Yeah, and off that too, I will say, I was able to do a fair amount of training for bike specific stuff. Thanks to the pandemic, was pretty much just,
Thank you, pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, my girlfriend is quoted on records of saying that I was training like a professional athlete during the pandemic because I had nothing else to do. So I definitely was spending a lot of time running and biking as a result. One thing I will say is, for training for things like these, I think the best method for these types of trips is low heart rate zone 2 training. So that's finding your heart rate zone that is in zone 2. And that means that you can have a conversation while you are exercising and you're doing it for long periods of time, and you need high volume. So, 2 to 3 to 4 hours of training at that low heart rate zone really builds that base where you're able to continue doing that, and you build that endurance base. And I was able to do a lot of that training without knowing that I was going to do this trip. I just did more of it because we were in a pandemic. And so I think that really helped me to have that base as well. And Chris obviously had the leg up on me because he had.
I don't know. I would want to point out that some people's zone 2 is a little different than other people's. There was a moment Chris wore a heart rate monitor the whole time, looked down, he's like, geez, my heart rate's only like 98 as I'm like sucking and trying to keep it in there. He's like, let's step it up a notch. And I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, that's completely false. I remember the only time I ever yelled at Chris during this trip was on day 2 because he was huffing and puffing up a hill. And I was worried for him that he would tire himself out. I don't know if he just was thinking about something really important or he was having like a moment, but he was just working so hard. And I remember yelling at him and like, dude, we got to bike 8 more days of this. So you're going to kill yourself. But yeah, no, we both kept each other in really good check. And it is really cool. We're both competitive people, but I don't think we're to a point where, or up to a fault where we would push each other to the ground. I think we understand, what our athletic capacity is. And so we're able to kind of manage that and know, what the right pace is for each other. And I think we nailed that really well. And that's the beauty of having a great partner is you recognize that. And Chris is an amazing partner. And so I think we saw those gains where we got to day 8 and we were like, oh my God, I'm not even tired. And we just biked 80 miles. And that's because we were pacing ourselves really well.
Yeah.
By some amazing athletic genetic or anything like that.
I thought I would lose weight on this trip just from being so active. And I got home and stepped on the scale and I gained 5 pounds. Pretty sure it's all in my quads. My quad circumference went up by an inch.
I thought it was Jamie's fault because he was feeding us the popcorn.
Which all the beer.
Pro tip is, I hate saying pro tip, but I would say recommendation for best biking snacks is the Pop-Tart Bites. Brand new, out off the shelf now. Unbelievable source of calories. So
cool. So you kind of answered, so this is from Lucy. You answered like a little bit, what did you prepare for the trip? But I think Lucy's asking also just more about the bike setup and the itinerary. So I know before you had said that you'd done some bike touring, but did you go out and like buy new gear? Did you just make the gear that you had work? Can you kind of tell us a little bit about just like how you actually brought all the pieces together on this?
Yeah. I'll say I wanted to mention this too. So thanks for asking that question. I had just bought a new bike this during the spring, and specifically bought a bike that would have a wider fork so that I could have a wider tire base. And Chris has a similar setup, and I think that is definitely the way of the future. So yes, you can ride like a skinny road tire if you want, but I think for things like this type of trip, it's amazing to have a wider tire because you just don't have to worry. The flats are less of an issue. You're not stopping and having to change your tires out every 3-4 hours. And then secondarily to that, it's just easier on your body and your butt specifically because you're not feeling and eating the road the same way that you are
It's a softer ride.
Yeah. So
what size tire did you have?
I have a 47 millimeter, so pretty wide, but it has a road slick in the middle. So it rides well on the road, but still has like a gravel side. So you can, ride well on the gravel, but it's sort of like an all-terrain.
Yeah. And I had a 49, I believe, but it was more of a slick. I didn't really have much of a tread pattern. So in terms of resistance, I think we were about the same. And speaking to the type of bikes we rode, we actually rode what are called gravel bikes versus road bikes. They're a little bit more comfortable, a slightly more upright position, so you're not as racy and bent over the handlebars. And there are a lot more mounting options to put stuff on the bike.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks.
And even things like I bought I have a Salsa bike it's designed for road and gravel, kind of a slice of both. And then even like the drop bars are slightly bowed out to just a more natural position, so you're not tucked into this arrow position when you are in the drops. Little things like that, I think you notice after day 6, 7.
Yeah.
That are really helpful. And then for the other gear stuff, I think we had. So we also worked with Apodora, who I don't think I mentioned a lot in the sponsor kind of riff, but I was familiar with them. They're out of the UK, and they're a just amazing company. So shout out if you're looking for bikepacking gear. Apodora, #1, hands down. Ultralight material. I would compare them to, if you're familiar with Hyperlight packs.
Yeah.
Really, really light material, really strong, durable material. I would compare them to Apodora to Hyperlight. It's kind of the same thing. Really, really durable material. Looks like a carbon fiber kind of stuff, like color. Really cool.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
Waterproof. And you can fit everything in them. So awesome gear setup for sure.
Cool. All right. So next question. You guys good? Ready for the next one?
Yeah.
All right. Frederick asks, okay, so do you have any special tips on how to film on your bike? What are your favorite angles? Mostly GoPro, or can you hold the big cam in one hand?
Would not recommend. When we were on a backcountry road with no traffic, where we hadn't met a car in several minutes, I think we'd do the one-handed GoPro thing.
Yeah.
If there was something to talk about. For the most part, we did not hold like our giant SLRs up. That would have been, I think, too dangerous. And just wouldn't want to drop something that big and expensive. But if we really want to like interview each other or something, we would stop. And then if we saw a picture, we would stop. And let's say I saw something beautiful, I'd be like, Chris, hey, do you mind if we stop and take a picture? And I'd get off, dismount from the bike, put it somewhere safe, out of traffic, select the lens that I wanted to use. And then have Chris kind of go around in circles when it was safe, when there was no traffic, until I got the shot I wanted.
Yeah, I would say I think it is sort of the same, only just a little bit more of a nuisance. If you're out hiking and you see a cool shot, you still take your backpack off and take your camera out, unless you're using some like a clip or something where it's accessible there. But you might not always have that. Maybe it's raining, maybe it's snowing, whatever. A lot of times you're going to have to stop and take your camera out of your backpack, and so that's a conscious decision that you make in your mind where you're going to stop to shoot something. I think that's the #1 tip I would suggest is when you're out biking, make that conscious decision that you want a specific shot and it's important to you. And then once you've made that decision, then figure out what the solution is. And it might be, you might need some creativity to do it. Or maybe you need to have a smaller and lighter gear setup in order to achieve those shots. So for us, like it's a low cost option for GoPros versus, a $2,000, camera body and another $1,000 lens. That's not a great idea to, be selfie sticking or anything like that. But GoPros are so good these days where you can really produce a fairly solid image for $300 if you really want, for a GoPro 8. So that's the #1 thing is like, get an accessory where it extends out really far. Don't be afraid. Another thing people might just not think about consciously, but you can flip the GoPro upside down if it's an easier way to hold it, and then just rotate it when you're editing it. So, things like that. Don't be afraid to flip it upside down. And if you want to get, your tires rolling and, boost up to 60 frames a second or 120 frames a second to show, those detail stuff. Because I think if you're trying to shoot something as a video, you don't want to just have, oh, here I am here, and here's the ocean here. Like, you want to have the details. What do my hands on the handlebars look like? What does, the bike look like? What do the pedals look like as I ride these things? Having those accessories to a GoPro, I think, are great tools to help you get those shots. And then, also the other thing I'd note is there are other options that are better than GoPros that are like $700.
Yeah.
You can buy like a point and shoot camera, and they can shoot 4K at like 60 frames per second. It might not be the most amazing footage, but it's still really good, and it's gonna be better than the GoPro. Maybe that's an option. Maybe you're not worried about dropping that as much as maybe a $3,000 camera setup. So that's always an option too.
And from a creative standpoint, there were times I know personally I felt we were really focused on making the miles, like go, 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 go. And when we did stop, we had to kind of force each other. At the beginning, we were just go, go, go. And near the end, we're like, well, let's really get more of this like first person shooting. And we would force each other to stop. And because we did, I feel like we maybe missed a little bit of stuff in the beginning, but we were stopping more often, day 5 and on. And there's just this one point where we were on the Blue Hill Peninsula, and we were riding along a cow field, and then there was a cow, and we stopped and took some pictures, and I kind of walked down and got closer to it. And as I walked along the fence, this cow just like followed me along for 100 feet. And I turned around, came back the other direction. It turned around, came with me. And it was just kind of a nice moment that we totally would have missed if we were like, oh, we got to get to Bar Harbor. And that goes for anything, hiking, running. Sometimes it's good to just stop, smell the roses, instead of busting out the miles, maybe hit reset and just look at something and look at the texture of bark on a tree or something, and you can make a compelling photograph just out of that. And if you don't slow down and focus on that, then you miss 100% of the pictures you don't take. So it's nice to get that mental reset.
Get off your bike, right? Like, talk to people that you're seeing. Those people. We had a few instances where we were able to ask people, they didn't make it into the film, but we'll do like a Chris and Chris style GoPro only edit of our trip too, which will have more of that stuff. But, we stopped at, a bunch of different, the lemonade stand and chatted with, little girl and her mom for an hour or whatever, and just had some cool conversations, and they let us film some of that and some other things like that. But, don't be afraid to stop and talk to people and interact with your environment. And then another thing I wanted to mention, if you're thinking about specifically biking, at least for video, is just being cognizant of audio. It's really hard when you're moving on the bike anyways to get good audio. And one thing that you can do to minimize that wind noise is to have a dead cat, is what it's called, but basically it's like a windscreen that goes over the mic. Depending on what you're using for camera, like GoPro makes these little attachments that you can put your camera into that has a windscreen for it. They're called media mods. They're like $70, I think, like something like that. And they have like a windscreen that actually goes over the mic. That helps with the audio. There are also like these little mini like dead cats that you can buy. They're like $17 or something like that, but you can put them on the mic holes on the GoPro, and that will help with the wind noise as well. But something that you'll want to be aware of if you are filming yourself on a bike, sometimes the audio might get dispersed because the wind can kind of confuse the camera.
That's a great tip. Cool. Well, we're right at the hour, so I think that was our last question. Thank you both for joining tonight, and I'm so excited to see the film. And a couple weeks.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so before we sign off, I just want to let everyone know we'll send down an email with lots of links, so you can follow Chris and Chris on all of their adventures and see that bike route and all that good stuff. And of course, shout out to Sierra Nevada for helping to make this happen. So with that, good night.